Okay, so today is November 11th, 2017. Okay, good morning, everybody. Okay, so we'll start with the homage to the Buddha 3 times. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so now we're coming to the very last chapter in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Ones. This is the chapter on mindfulness directed to the body. Actually, there's 2 chapters on this topic that we're going to go through. And so in the last class, I went through the different exercises that are comprised under mindfulness directed to the body. And as I explained, there are 2, the expression mindfulness directed to the body. Well, let me get the Pali expression. Yeah, the Pali word is Kaya-gata sati. So sati, of course, is mindfulness. Gata is literally gone to, and kaya is the body. So this is mindfulness, literally gone to the body, or more freely, mindfulness directed to the body. And so the expression is used in 2 senses in the Buddhist canonical text. The narrow sense, as I explained, is the meditation on the 31 or 32 parts of the body, going from the hairs of the head, hairs of the body, nails, teeth, skin, and so on. And then the broader sense, the way it's used in this sutta, the sutta on mindfulness directed to the body, is to comprise all of the exercises that are included in mindfulness of the body according to the Satipatthana system. And so this will include, go away, mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of the 4 postures, clear comprehension in all activities, the meditation on, this is the narrow sense, mindfulness on the 32 parts of the body, the meditation on the 4 elements, the 9 so-called charnel ground or cremation ground meditations. And even in this sutta, it brings in the 4 jhanas into mindfulness directed to the body. Because the 4 jhanas, the 4 meditative absorptions, in the 4 jhanas, the meditator makes the different blissful states that arise pervade the entire body. So naturally there will be mindfulness of the body in the jhanas. Okay, so in the last class I did a review of all of those meditation subjects. Okay, please come, please come. Yeah, just wherever you can find seats. Actually, there are some seats up here you can take. Yeah. Okay, so now, in this series of suttas, the Buddha is going to praise in various ways the benefits of mindfulness directed to the body. And we'll have to try to see how these can tie in with the different exercises included under mindfulness directed to the body. So the first, he makes a very, very broad claim. He says that just as one who encompasses with his mind the great ocean includes thereby all the streams that run into the ocean, just so whoever develops and cultivates mindfulness directed to the body includes all wholesome qualities that pertain to, that are comprised under true knowledge. Okay, so if we direct our mind to an ocean, say the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Oceans, we'll take the Atlantic Ocean, then when we're thinking of the Atlantic Ocean, then our mind is including within the Atlantic Ocean all of the waters from the different rivers that are flowing either directly or indirectly into the Atlantic Ocean. So we have here the Hudson River, just a few miles away. That's flowing from upper New York State down through the Hudson River Valley, this area, down into New York City. And then at the mouth of the Hudson River, it flows into the Atlantic Ocean. And other rivers, I don't know the other rivers that are flowing. Please, any geographers here? The Amazon River, does that flow? It flows into the Atlantic also. The Thames River, eventually its waters reach the Atlantic. What is that? Delaware River. Okay, so we see a number of rivers. We don't have to get too specific. So their waters flow and come into the Atlantic Ocean. And so if we think of the Atlantic Ocean, implicitly we're thinking of all of those rivers whose waters flow into the Atlantic Ocean. And so it's said that when one develops and cultivates mindfulness directed to the body, then all the wholesome qualities that pertain to, here the word is translated true knowledge, but there's really no such thing as false knowledge. If it's false, then it's not knowledge. But the Pali word is vijja. And these are vijja. Vijja bhagya dhamma. So all of these things that relate to true knowledge, or I would prefer now to translate clear knowledge. And according to other suttas, from other suttas, we could see that the meaning, some of the meanings of this vijja, or clear knowledge, it would comprise, to take a minimal set, there are the texts speak about three kinds of vijja, three kinds of clear knowledge. One of these is the knowledge of one's previous existences. It's called the knowledge of recollecting one's past abodes. And so we find this described in various ways. Typically, typically it's said that when the mind is concentrated, purified, cleansed, unblemished, and so on, then one directs the mind to the knowledge of the recollection of past abodes. And so one can recollect one's many past existences, 1 birth, 2 births, 3 births, up to even 100 births, 1,000 births, 100,000 births, many aeons of world dissolution, world evolution, and so forth. Recollecting, there I was so named, of such a clan, had such an appearance, such was my food, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such my lifespan. Passing away from there, I was reborn elsewhere. One recollects the same thing until one comes to the present life. So this is one of the special higher knowledges that is developed on the basis, according to this sutta, of mindfulness directed to the body. But in order to gain access to this kind of knowledge, one has to develop the meditation to the level of the 4 meditative absorptions. So we have 4 stages of absorption: the first, the second, the third, and the fourth. And it's in the 4th absorption that the mind becomes very powerfully concentrated, very clear, free from all disturbances. The way it's described here, it becomes purified, cleansed, unblemished, attain to imperturbability, that is free of any kind of excitation or disturbance. And then with that powerfully concentrated mind, this is the systematic way to develop the recollection of past lives, according to the commentaries. One doesn't just make the determination, let me recollect 100 past lives, and then that knowledge automatically comes. But rather, one has to proceed in a sequential and systematic way. So one comes out of the jhana, and the mind is now very, very tranquil. It's just like a lake in which the wind has stopped, and the waters of the lake are completely quiescent, completely placid, completely clear. So when you look into the lake, you could see the different pebbles and stones at the bottom of the lake. You can see the fish swimming around in the lake. Okay, so with this clear mind, one starts recollecting, what did I do before I sat in the seat for meditation? And what did I do before I came over to the seat? What did I do earlier in the day? What did I do yesterday? What did I do in the previous days? And then the knowledge starts speeding up, so one is going through all of these events, preceding events, very quickly. And then it's said that one directs the mind back last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so one is able to recollect things very, very clearly and easily, things that happened many years ago, till one comes back to one's childhood, one's infancy, then one directs the mind into the stay in the mother's womb, and one can recollect the period in the mother's womb until the stream of consciousness comes back, going back to the moment of rebirth, the very moment of rebirth linking. Then it said one comes up against a wall, like one can't penetrate that wall. So what one has to do, it's a little bit like somebody who wants to chop down a tree with an axe, and he's chopping, and then it gets to the point where the axe is dull, so he can't chop anymore, not very efficiently. So what does he do? Exactly, sharpen the axe. Yeah, exactly, good. So what the meditator has to do when he comes up against this wall is to go back into the fourth jhana and then fortify the mind in the jhana, then come out again, and now directing the mind back to that blank wall. Pushing. If the wall doesn't collapse, he has to go back and sharpen the mind by entering the jhana. Pushing, then go back into the recollection, pushing. And then it said, if the mind, the faculties are strong enough and the effort is powerful enough, at a certain point, that wall collapses and one is then back into the previous life. Okay, then one sends the mind back through the previous life till again one comes to that stone wall. Again one goes into the jhana, strengthens it, pushes until one gets back 2 lives. And then one keeps on, I guess at a certain point, one develops enough skill so that one doesn't have to keep on going into the jhana, coming out, but one is just able, maybe it's a little bit like a kid who's learning to ride a bicycle, to change the simile. So, if you could remember, I can still remember when I was graduating from my tricycle and starting to ride the 2-wheel bicycle, terrified. So what did my father do to ease my terror is to put on, I think they call them trainer wheels. Okay, so you're riding on the bicycle with the trainer wheels. And now I don't remember how we lifted the trainer wheels, but some way. So then you lift the trainer wheels and then you're riding on two wheels. Oh, how scary, terrified. But you're doing it. And then the fear comes up and then you go back to the trainer wheels. And you do this over and over until you get enough skill riding on just 2 wheels. And so you say to your father, okay, Dad, I can do it. Then he takes off the trainer wheels and you're riding all around the neighborhood. Look at me, I'm on 2 wheels, wow. And so it doesn't need the trainer wheels anymore. So I would assume that once one develops the skill in recollecting several past lives through using the jhana as the tool, then one has enough skill, enough experience to be able to go back earlier lives, one life before another life. But I think with different people, the ability to go back and recollect previous lives will depend upon a number of other factors, including probably the ability, the degree to which they've practiced this in still earlier lives. You know, there's a widespread view, you know, for those who have a scientific education, that the mind depends upon the brain, that the mind is a kind of byproduct of brain function. And so if when the body dies and the brain deteriorates, therefore mind or consciousness comes to a complete end, and there's nothing beyond that. But the Buddha's view is quite different. What the Buddhist texts say is that there's a kind of mutual conditionality between mind and, actually the texts just speak about the physical basis of consciousness as the heart base. So there's a relationship of mutual conditioning whereby the heart base, which we could now maybe interpret to include the brain, so all of the physical nervous tissue that's involved as the physical basis for consciousness. So all of this supports the functioning of consciousness, and consciousness in turn is what enables the brain and the heart base to function as vital organs. And so this mutual conditioning relationship continues through the whole course of the lifespan. But what happens at death is that the life force of the body is extinguished. So the body can no longer serve as the basis or support for mind or consciousness. But this doesn't mean that consciousness comes to a termination, to an end with the death of the body. But rather, as long as there is ignorance and craving embedded within the stream of consciousness, that craving will drive the stream of consciousness on to seek a new embodiment. And that stream of consciousness, when the right karmic conditions appear, it will seize upon or grasp upon a newly conceived physical organism, an embryo, and it will arise based on that embryo. And in this way, the new existence begins. So that is the process of conception or birth, or conception. You said?
Does the karma come in, please?
Where does the karma come in?
Yes.
Yeah, karma is what directs, let us say it's the craving is the propelling force that pushes the stream of consciousness on. But karma is what determines where the stream of consciousness will go. What will be the conditions under which one will take a new existence? So if the karma, let us say, is that of say a person has engaged in a lot of animal-like behavior, so they've generated a lot of karma that's leading to the animal realm. And so the person passes away, and then that karma will push the stream of consciousness sort of seeking a new existence, and Rover has just been, has an embryo there, and so the stream of consciousness links to the embryo in Rover's uterus, and so the new life will begin as an animal.
So it's not volitional.
One doesn't have a choice where one is going to be reborn. Yeah. Yeah, it's determined by one's karma. One has a choice what kind of karma one creates.
But only now.
Now, yeah. But when the death process is occurring, then one can't say, I don't want to be reborn there. I want to be reborn as a human being under good circumstances or in one of the heavenly worlds. If one had that choice, then there would be no hell realm, no animal realm. Well, maybe some people want to be reborn as animals.
It may not have to do with if you do not practice free will, volition,
Yeah,
or getting rid of delusions in this lifetime.
yeah,
Then obviously you are
Yeah,
But if you rise above some of these things,
yeah.
you may have, there is a percentage of volition, right, in some ways.
Well, the volition is what we exercise now.
Right.
It's through our volitions now that we determine what kind of actions we're going to engage in.
Right.
And so if one makes that volitional effort to follow the Noble Eightfold Path, or virtue, concentration, wisdom, and then the wisdom comes to full maturity, then one could eliminate all the defilements, and then one is liberated from the cycle of birth and death. But if one isn't liberated, then where the stream of consciousness will go depends on the karma that one creates in this life. It's not that you could just like indulge in all of the unwholesome actions one wants, and then when death takes place,
Apologize?
excuse me?
No, said you could apologize?
Well, apologize, or one just thinks, I'm a powerful person, I have a lot of money, a high position, I'm a monk, I can't go to the lower realm. But if I do bad actions, I'm going there. Yeah, I'm not going to go into those distinctions now. Yeah, we're just trying to see how the rebirth process works. Okay, so I got sidetracked.
So sorry.
Okay, so I was explaining how rebirth, what underlies the rebirth process. Okay, so because the stream of consciousness has gone through so many existences, the Buddha says, without any perceptible or conceivable beginning in time. And so by developing mindfulness of the body, and then using the mindfulness of the body as a basis for developing the four jhanas, then one could use the four jhanas to recollect one's previous existences. So that is the first vijja, the first clear knowledge. The second clear knowledge, also it comes in this text, is called the divine eye. Okay, so this is a special faculty of vision that can be used to see beings in other realms of existence. It's said in the Visuddhimagga and the other commentaries that the special way to develop the divine eye is through practicing meditation on the light kasina. The light kasina, this will be like a circular disc of light. And so one can use, of course I don't suggest staring at the sun to get the light impression, since that could be dangerous. But one could use the disc of the full moon, or one could set up maybe an electric light, a bright electric light, and then put a plank of wood in front of it with a circle carved out in order to have a circular disc. And so then one has a circular disc of light, and then one develops or attains the meditative absorptions based on the light kasina. And then when one has developed the meditative absorptions, then one directs that light that one has perceived, one spreads that light out so that one could, and then makes the determination, let this light illuminate other realms of existence. And so then by the power of that light, one could then see the celestial realms, at least some of them, one could see, even close to the human realm, one could see the devas. There are some deities who are dwelling close to the human realm. One could see them. One could see the ghostly beings without any fear, because you have also strong compassion for them. And then one could even send that light downward to see the lower realms, the hell realms. Okay, so the elementary stage in the divine eye is to see the other realms of existence. But then, building upon that supersensory perception, one could then see how the process of karma is operating in determining the destiny of other beings. And so here it's said that with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he sees other beings passing away and being reborn. And he sees the different conditions of their rebirth. Some are inferior, some are superior, some are beautiful, some are ugly, some have good fortune, others meet with a lot of misfortune. And so he understands how beings fare on in accordance with their karma. So those who engage in misconduct, who revile noble ones, who hold wrong view, and undertake actions based on wrong view, they take rebirth in the plane of misery. But those who engage in good conduct of body, speech, and mind, and don't revile the noble ones, who hold right view and generate karma based on right view, after death they get reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world. Okay, and so that is the special power of the divine eye. And again, that power can arise through mindfulness directed to the body. Okay, then the third vijja, the third clear knowledge, and this is the one, the other two are sort of icing on the cake, so to speak. They're not really the essence or core of the Buddha's teaching, but they are special knowledges that a yogi who wants to develop those knowledges can develop if he or she wants to. But the core of the Dharma is the knowledge, the penetrative understanding of the Four Noble Truths leading to the liberation of mind from the defilements. And so here we have, when the mind is concentrated, purified, cleansed, and so forth, this meditator directs the mind to the knowledge of the destruction of the taints. These are the asavas. And so this knowledge that brings about the destruction of the asavas is in fact the experiential knowledge or the experiential penetration of the Four Noble Truths. So one understands as it really is, this is dukkha, this is the origin of dukkha, this is the cessation of dukkha, this is the way, the path or practice leading to the cessation of suffering. And then one understands these are the taints, the asavas. This is the origin of the asavas. This is the cessation of the asavas. This is the way leading to the cessation of the asavas. Okay, so this penetration of the Four Noble Truths, generally it's said to take place in 4 stages, corresponding to the 4 stages of realization, the 4 planes of awakening or enlightenment. But here, this sutta has sort of compressed them all into one. So the higher stage, I'm going to come to the 4 as we go through these suttas. So when he knows and sees thus, his mind is liberated from the taint or the asava of sensual desire, then from the taint of, it's called the taint of existence. It really means the taint of craving for existence. And then from the taint of ignorance. And then when the mind is liberated, there comes the knowledge, it's liberated. And then one understands birth is finished, the cycle of rebirths has been brought to an end, the spiritual life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more coming back to any state of conditioned existence. Okay, so with this, it said that ignorance is dispelled, true knowledge has arisen, darkness is dispelled, light has arisen, as happens when one dwells heedful, ardent, and resolute. Okay, so those are the 3 types of clear knowledge. And according to the sutta, these all flow out from the mindfulness directed to the body. So if one, it might seem we're practicing a meditative exercise based on the body, mindfulness of breathing, or mindfulness of the rising and falling of the abdomen, mindfulness of the 4, or contemplation of the 4 elements, and the mind wanders, disturbing thoughts arise, distraction arises, and we think this is futile, this is useless, I don't have any chance. But if we practice this really diligently, then we're gradually building up the conditions over time that will give us access to these 3 kinds of clear knowledge. So we're building up the support conditions for this clear knowledge. Okay, now we come to some more praise of mindfulness directed to the body. Okay, when one thing, the Buddha is really emphasizing the importance of this mindfulness of the body. It's one thing, Eka-dhammo, when developed and cultivated, leads to a strong sense of urgency. Here the key word, the word that's translated urgency. It's a really powerful Pali word for which we don't have an exact equivalent in English. Samvega. Yeah, the part Vega is somehow connected to like a current or a wave. And the meaning of Samvega, when we translate a sense of urgency, it's a very approximate translation, but it's a certain kind of, let us say, an wholesome agitation that overcomes one. For example, when one, maybe on an occasion, if one has a close encounter with death, either one's own death, a close brush with death, or one witnesses the sudden death of somebody close to yourself, or you get very seriously ill, and then you see how fragile life is. And then you're stirred. It sort of breaks one out from one's complacency, one's conviction that every day is going to be the same as the previous days. And that one could just sort of take on trust that there's nothing to be worried about, nothing to be concerned about, that there's no danger ahead. But the sense of urgency arises from a perception of danger. Sort of the danger, like we could say that, I don't think this is a simile that the Buddhist text would use because they're not so acquainted with ice, but it's like you're walking on a lake of thin ice. You're in the middle of a lake, and then you step in one place and the ice starts to crack under your feet. And then you look around and this happened to me actually, one of the early winters that I was at this monastery. It was a very cold winter and I was walking on the ice of the Seven Jewel Lake. Yeah, the ice was very thick and I thought, oh, I really can walk from one side of the lake to the other. And then at one point I put my foot down and the ice started to split under my feet, my foot. I thought, what? What foolishness. And I looked around and I'm almost in the middle of this lake and I'm wondering, how do I will I be safe getting back to the other side, getting back to safety? Obviously I managed to get back. I don't remember how. But it's like you put your foot down and the ice is starting to crack and you realize you're in a dangerous situation. Okay, so this mindfulness directed to the body, how does it lead to this sense of urgency?
When you know that you are not going to have a body, when you're so focused on it, and
Yeah.
you think everything is in my body,
Yeah,
feeling good, feeling bad, what I possess, what I don't possess,
yeah,
and then there's this split second where you realize you're not going to be in that body.
Okay, that's a one
It's an
possibility.
urgent-
Yeah, that's one
you
possibility.
wonder, where am I going to? It may still be clinging, Bhante, because you will now think, I'm not clinging to my body, what next do I have to cling to?
Yeah,
You know, it's like reaching for something
yeah,
because you don't know where to go.
yeah.
Basically. That's
Okay,
how I-
but I'm thinking about the specific exercises mentioned under mindfulness directed to the body. What is likely to generate that sense of urgency? Okay, remember okay, Osman? Yeah, say it again. Yeah, I think the one that will have that impact, the strongest impact in generating a sense of urgency would be the charnel ground contemplations. Because you're doing, the way it's explained in the sutta, as you're doing, contemplating, and it can be done in imagination, you don't have to go to an actual cremation ground to see this. But as you're contemplating the corpses and the different stages of disintegration, you reflect, I too am subject to that same fate, that I have not escaped that. And similarly, I would say also, my own opinion, that let's see, any other ideas, any other exercises here could generate this sense of urgency.
Any misfortune that falls on anybody, you can take it.
Yeah, but I'm talking specifically about mindfulness directed to the body. It should be the exercises mentioned in that sutta.
Reflecting on
Well, apart from the charnel ground meditations, we don't find mindfulness of death included in the mindfulness directed to the body. It's rather a separate meditation subject. Yeah, who said that? Yeah. I think the meditation on the 32 parts of the body will generate a sense of urgency. Because usually we take the body to be take it as an integral whole and to be lovely, or we try to make it lovely. We're getting older, and we dye the hair and put on makeup and go to the gym to become strong. Of course, we should keep in good health. But when you sort of examine the body and see that there are these different tissues, organs, fluids, this is what I'm taking to be me, to be I, to be myself, then it will generate a sense of urgency. Okay, so we have several of the subjects in mindfulness of the body leading to a strong sense of urgency. Okay, obviously they lead to great good, they lead to great security from bondage. This is really another term for nibbana. They lead to mindfulness and clear comprehension, lead to the attainment of knowledge and vision, lead to a pleasant dwelling in this very life, lead to realization of the fruit of knowledge and liberation. So the fruit of knowledge and liberation, we already saw this in the third clear knowledge, whereby one gains the penetrative insight into the Four Noble Truths, and through that insight into the Four Truths, the mind is liberated from the asavas, from the defilements. Okay, when one thing is developed and cultivated, the body becomes tranquil, the mind becomes tranquil, thought and examination subside, and all wholesome qualities that pertain to true knowledge reach fulfillment by development. Okay, so this I think we can experience for ourselves even at relatively elementary stages of meditation. So as we pay attention to the body, to the breathing, or just become attentive to this is the body sitting, or scanning the body, experiencing the sensations in the body, then if you're sitting for 45, 50 minutes, and then you get up, you can see that maybe when you first sat down, the first 10, 15 minutes, even 20 minutes, the body is restless, the mind is stirring with many thoughts, but after 15 or 20 minutes, the mind starts to settle down, the body correspondingly becomes tranquil, the bubbling of thoughts starts to settle down. And so in that way, one is experiencing this benefit directly through mindfulness directed to the body. Okay, when one thing is developed and cultivated, unarisen, unwholesome qualities do not arise, and arisen, unwholesome qualities are abandoned. Then that goes with the next one, that unarisen, wholesome qualities arise, and arisen, wholesome qualities increase and expand. Okay, so you could say that the unwholesome qualities that are removed through mindfulness directed to the body, we could say that, sort of sum them up in the 5 hindrances. So sensual desires, anger and ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and worry, and doubt. So those are a selection of unwholesome qualities. But then there would be many others, like thoughts of jealousy, thoughts of competitiveness, thoughts of miserliness, worry and anxiety, stress, resentment, arrogance, worry, a whole, almost an infinite number of unwholesome qualities. So as one is choosing, one chooses a simple object and directs the mind to that object, the breath, the bodily sensations, whatever, then those unwholesome qualities start to fall away, And then along with the mindfulness directed to the body, other qualities, wholesome qualities arise. So this would be a wholesome kind of thought and examination. Then a wholesome kind of joy will start to arise. And a wholesome kind of bliss will arise. And mindfulness will be present. Clear comprehension will be present. Tranquility will be present. The mind is becoming concentrated, so samadhi will start to emerge. Okay, so in this way, we could say that mindfulness directed to the body is one of the means to overcome unwholesome mental states and to bring into being and to bring to fulfillment the wholesome mental states. Okay, now the next few suttas, here I just group them together, show other benefits. These would be the more powerful benefits of mindfulness directed to the body. So when one thing is developed and cultivated, ignorance is abandoned, then true knowledge, clear knowledge arises. The conceit, I am, is abandoned. The underlying tendencies are abandoned, and the fetters are abandoned. Is there some problem? Okay, these suttas show, I would say that they show the function of the wisdom that is developed on the basis of mindfulness directed to the body. So when one initially undertakes a practice of mindfulness directed to the body, initially one is developing tranquility or serenity, samatha. So this is tranquility, serenity, calmness. Which comes to, culminates in deep absorption, with a focusing on the object, samadhi. But then based on that samadhi, one then has to go on to develop insight, vipassana or panya. Mm. Can't find any ends with the wiggles on top. Okay, there we go. Okay, so based on that tranquility or concentration of mind, one then goes on to develop insight by examining the nature of body and mind, the material and mental factors, and one breaks down or differentiates the complex of experience into the 5 aggregates: bodily form, feeling, perception, the mental formations, and consciousness. And then one examines these factors in terms of their impermanence, their unsatisfactory nature, and their nature as being not self, not mine, not I, not myself. And then as that insight is developed and it turns into the penetrating wisdom, then it reaches a point as it comes to maturity where ignorance is gradually cut off, because one is developing the insight or wisdom that sees into the nature of experience. It's like putting a very powerful microscope to one's experience. And so one could see the conditioned nature of all experience, that everything arises through causes and conditions. And since everything in the body and mind depends on impermanent causes and conditions, everything here is impermanent. And so that insight into impermanence, into the dukkha or the unsatisfactoriness, and into anatta, non-self, is slicing away at ignorance and giving rise to true knowledge. And then also, as one is investigating one's experience in terms of non-self, not that this is not mine, not I, not myself, this conceit, I am better, I am superior, I am excellent, this is abandoned. Even the very notion that I have an I somewhere at the center of experience, this is being abandoned. And then the underlying tendencies, the deep tendencies to the defilements are uprooted, and the fetters that hold one in bondage to samsara, those are abandoned. And so all of this, the Buddha says, arises out of mindfulness directed to the body. Okay, then when mindfulness directed to the body is cultivated, it leads to, it mentions some other benefits: differentiation by wisdom, nibbana through non-clinging. It leads to the penetration of numerous elements, the penetration of the diversity of elements. So what are the elements? It leads to the analytical knowledge of numerous elements. So what are the elements? These would be the elements that constitute experience. Usually the texts, the classical texts, analyze experience in terms of 18 elements. And so we have these 6 sense faculties, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and then the mental faculty, or mano, mind. And then they have their corresponding objects for the eye, visible forms, for the sound, ears, for the nose, odors, for the tongue, tastes, for the body, touch sensations, and then for the mind faculty, mental objects. And then corresponding to the 6 mental faculties are the 6 types of consciousness. Eye consciousness, which has the function of seeing. Ear consciousness has the function of hearing. Smelling consciousness has the function of smelling. Tongue consciousness, the function of tasting. Body consciousness, the function of picking up tactile sensations. And then mind consciousness, the function of knowing mental objects, ideas, concepts, mental images, and so on. And so through developing the mindfulness directed to the body, then one gains this acuity of insight whereby one can differentiate one's experience clearly in terms of the different elements. Okay, then it's said that mindfulness directed to the body leads to realization of the 4 fruits of the path, the 4 fruits of the Buddha's spiritual life. So this is when one is cultivating wisdom or insight, when that wisdom or insight becomes mature, at the first level, one realizes the fruit of stream entry. So the fruit of stream entry, that is the stage where one cuts off. Usually we speak about 10 fetters that keep one in bondage to the cycle of birth and death. So we have fetters of view of self, Okay, so at the stage of stream entry, through the development, at the stage of stream entry, one develops the first penetration of the 4 Noble Truths. So one sees them directly as an experiential realization. And with that breakthrough to the 4 Noble Truths, one cuts off these 3 lowest fetters. The view of self, of any kind of substantial self in relation to the 5 aggregates, doubt about the Buddha and his teaching, and what used to be translated clinging to rites and ceremonies, but I take it more in the sense of clinging to good behavior and observances, with the idea that merely by observing certain precepts and engaging in certain observances, one could automatically gain liberation. Okay, so with the first breakthrough, these 3 fetters are eliminated. With the second breakthrough is what brings the fruit of once returning. Okay, the stream enterer is one who has entered the stream of the Dhamma, and won't come back more than at most 7 more times, won't take more than 7 more existences. With the realization of the fruit of once returning, one becomes a once returner who will come back at most only 1 more time. Okay, the once returner doesn't cut off any more fetters, but weakens the existing fetters, especially sensual desire and ill will. Then with the attainment of the 3rd fruit, one cuts off sensual desire and ill will so that they can never arise again. And the non-returner does not come back to this world or any place in the sensual realm, but the non-returner will take rebirth in one of the higher realms, especially the pure, what's called the pure abodes, and then attain liberation directly from that higher realm. Okay, then the 4th and final stage is the path of arahatship, which cuts off the remaining fetters. So this would be craving for existence in the form realm. Craving for existence in the formless realm. Conceit, I am. Restlessness, very subtle restlessness. And then ignorance, the last residue of ignorance. And that culminates when those fetters are cut off, then comes realization of the fruit of arhatship, the final stage of the practice. And so all of these can be attained on the basis of mindfulness directed to the body. Okay, then the remaining suttas, which I've all grouped together, we have, I think, 15, 16 suttas here. Praise, mindfulness directed to the body, leading to obtaining wisdom, the growth of wisdom, the expansion of wisdom, greatness of wisdom, diversity of wisdom, vastness of wisdom, depth of wisdom, the unsurpassed wisdom, breadth of wisdom, abundance of wisdom, rapidity of wisdom, buoyancy of wisdom, joyousness of wisdom, swiftness of wisdom, keenness of wisdom, penetrativeness of wisdom. So if that doesn't motivate you to practice mindfulness directed to the body, so all of those different kinds of wisdom come out from mindfulness directed to the body. Okay, then we come to the very last chapter, which we don't really have to go into any detail with, because it's just really just praising in different ways mindfulness directed to the body in relation to the deathless, which is nibbana. So just take the first one. They do not partake of the deathless who do not partake of mindfulness directed to the body. Whereas those who partake of mindfulness directed to the body partake of the deathless. So if you want to enjoy the deathless, then you practice mindfulness directed to the body. And then we come to the last one. We could just go directly to the last one. They have not realized the deathless who have not realized mindfulness directed to the body, but they have realized the deathless who have realized mindfulness directed to the body. Okay, so we finished finally the Anguttara Nikaya Book of the Ones. Are there any questions on anything covered today? Okay, Dina, do we have that hand microphone?
Hi. This has been amazing. So, sensual desire.
Yeah.
If we got rid of sensual desire, we would get rid of humanity. I mean, if we had no desire,
Yeah.
no sensual desire, how would we have birth and rebirth? And number two, so I don't...
Wait. Let's take one at a time.
Okay.
If you're rid of sensual desire, how will you be rid of birth?
How would humanity then, continue? Because we would have to keep taking rebirth in order to grow up. And if we can't have if we don't have sensual desire, then we don't get together with the other guy, and then there's no children and no chance to come back. I'm quite serious about this.
Yeah, I know that. My answer to this is, I don't intend this just jocularly, though it might sound a little jocular.
It's okay.
Let me see how I used to put this. Yeah, if everybody had good health, the hospital business, the whole medical profession would collapse. But the answer to that is, don't worry, in a way, don't worry, or maybe start worrying. There's never going to be an end to people getting sick. If this disease is eliminated, another disease is going to arise and become prevalent. So there's always going to be people getting sick, and so there'll always be need for hospitals and medical doctors. Similarly, the number of people who are going to follow the path to liberation and reach the stages, the fruits of even the stream enterers, even those who reach the first stage of realization, are not yet rid of sensual desire, not yet rid of sexual desire. So they can have children, even some of them, like Anathapindika and Visakha, the Buddha's female supporter, had many children. She was a stream enterer. So it's only at the second stage that the sensual desire really starts to thin out. At the third stage that it's overcome. So how many non-returners and arahats are going to be in the world at any time compared to the greatest number?
Thank you. That's interesting.
And the same principle, even bringing it down to a much lower level, this was the argument some people used to make it to me when I decided to become a monk. They would say like, well, what happens if everybody becomes a monk or all the women become nuns? The planet is going to die out. Humanity is finished. So my reply is, don't worry. Don't worry. Very, very few are going to become monks and nuns.
That's great. Thank you so much. So just one more. You said that the mere observation of the precepts is not enough. When you were talking about rites and ceremonies, you know, or not mere, that may be my word, but you said something about if you think observing the precepts, you know, you're going to be okay. It's not enough.
It's sufficient.
Yeah. So what is enough if not that?
Oh, then one has to fulfill the whole training of moral conduct, concentration, and wisdom. But actually, the way I think, this is one of the most obscure terms in the early teachings. And the way I think it was really intended during the Buddha's time, Sila Bhatta, paramasa. So it's actually a compound of sila and vata, or in Sanskrit, vrata. I think this was directed actually at the Brahmins and the other ascetics of the period who would undertake certain observances of behavior. Like the Brahmins had very detailed codes of behavior, and then the ceremonies that they had to perform, and the rituals as a precondition for liberation. And then the ascetics of the period also had these observances. Even they're observed by the ascetics in India today, like you make the vow to stand on one leg for a whole month, or to keep the arms up in the air, or some make the vow to behave like a dog, going on all fours, barking, going from house to house, barking to get one's food. There were even ascetics in the Buddha's time who practiced like that. See Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 57. And fasting for long periods, thinking that is a way to, by afflicting the body, that one could gain liberation. And so what I think the Buddha is doing with this stipulation is rejecting these kinds of practices as means to liberation.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
maybe some other people have some. Okay, Ravi, and you can take the mic.
Two Pali words that are used, klesha
Yeah.
and asavas. Do they mean the same?
Okay, the question is, there's several words used in Pali. One word is kilesa, or Sanskrit is klesha, and the other word is asava. Yeah, klesha is a very broad term that includes all the different types of defilements, all the different groups. All of them come within the scope of klesha. But the asavas are a set of just 3, or sometimes expanded to 4. The 4 that I mentioned, that are mentioned in the text. Sensual desire, the craving for existence, ignorance, and then sometimes wrong views are added.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe if there's any more question, we could take one more question. Okay, Tsering?
Bhante, it may not be directly related to this lecture you delivered, but it's in connection with the 5 aggregates. In the 5 aggregates, you have a thing called, my question would be, where would this concept about good and bad fall under?
Where would they fall in relation?
Under which category would it fall under?
They would come under the aggregate of mental formations.
Mental formations?
Yeah.
Not perceptions?
Well, the thing is that everything gets colored by the mental formations. So the perceptions, feelings, and consciousness itself gets colored by the mental formations. But it's the mental formations that are primarily wholesome and unwholesome.
Okay, thank you.
So when there's unwholesome mental formations, then the perception and feeling will be unwholesome, the consciousness will be unwholesome. Okay, we will stop now, and then we could come back here. Let's aim at 12:20, and then if anybody has any questions. And we should go up quickly, I would say. If you want to take lunch and come back, to go up fairly quickly, because I heard that there's a group that's having a one-day meditation retreat, and probably they'll come out at 12 o'clock. What is that? You're going? It's not correct, or you're not sure? Yeah. So we should go up and take the lunch now. Otherwise, if they come out, and then you'll get delayed.
Usually, the kitchen staff let the student having a meditation retreat go first. So they actually won't let us go in until a little bit after 12.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I don't think that they're taking the 8 precepts. Okay, but we should go up. First we do the 3 bows, 3 half bows. Ooh.